What's up, guys, and welcome back to BDTV. As you can tell, I'm not at the desk because we on Christmas break, but I'm still coming at you live with the Week 2 preview for this Fantasy Football Friday. We got 4 teams that won last week and are marching on, looking for that next win to make it to the Fantasy Football Finals. 4 teams also that did not do so well, looked a little like the Louisville Cardinals and couldn't get a win, hoping to avoid the Sacco. But without further ado, here comes your Week 2 preview. All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to the first preview where we're going to be taking a look at the number 1 seed and defending champion Andrew Luck's Retirement Fund against the number 5 seed Schrute Farms JV Football. Now, this week for the preview, we're going to be looking at 2 things for each team, 1 player to watch and 1 area of concern. So we'll kick it off with Andrew Luck's Retirement Fund. His player to watch this week, Davante Adams, with Pittsburgh giving up 28 points per game to opposing wide receivers 6 times this season and over 120 yards in all but 4 games. Number 17 could be busy. Pittsburgh comes in ranked near the bottom of the league in wide receiver defense, ranked number 30, and couple that with the fact that Davante Adams has scored at least 9 fantasy points in 9 of 14 games this year, and he averages almost 14 points per game. He's going to be primed for a big game, or at least a bounce-back game after he's been securing less than 75 yards the last 2 games and 0 touchdowns for a total of 9 fantasy points. He's primed for a big return. Now, his area of concern for the retirement fund is going to be the QB game. Someone who's not had many anxieties at the QB position this year will suddenly have to turn away from his top-tier QB. Jalen Hurts is out with an injury, and he's going to have to turn to Geno Smith and the Seattle offense. Not much of a downgrade, as Geno is still ranked number 6 at the QB position, but it does bring about an almost 7-point drop on average at the QB position, where Hurts does a lot of his damage on the ground game. Geno does not, earning most of his points through the air. In what's expected to be a high-scoring affair with the Chiefs on Saturday, the QB for the Andrew Luck Retirement Fund could be fine, but it is one area to be watching, and we'll have more to come on that later. Now for Schrute Farms JV Football, the player to watch this week, Kirk Cousins. In Kirk we trust. You like that? Kirk has gone off in his last 2 games for a combined total of 885 yards on 65 of 95 passing, coming in at 68% and 6 touchdowns. He's amassed 77 fantasy points and has another favorable matchup with the visiting Giants this week. New York, listed as the 12th toughest against QBs. New York has allowed more than 16 fantasy points in 9 of 14 weeks this year, including 3 of the last 4. Tied for the biggest over-under on the week at 49.5. The conditions are right for Kirk to have another huge performance this week. He's going to ride him while he's hot. His area of concern, the wide receiver game, with Garrett Wilson having the 6th friendliest defense against wide receivers and only going off for 1 fantasy point on Thursday night. The rest of the beat farmers' eggs are literally in Lamb's basket and the Dallas offense. And I'm not sure if sheep like eggs, but CD goes against a Philly defense ranked 7th against wide receivers and given up 150 yards to opposing receivers only 5 times this year. He's coming off a strong performance against Jacksonville with 126 yards, and the 3rd time this year he's been over 100 yards. But on average, after those 100-yard games, CD is averaging only 58 yards a game and 0.5 touchdowns per game. We'll have to keep an eye on that one. All right, in our next matchup, we got the number 2 Delphi Rabid Mongooses and the number 3 Triple Team. Now, when we look at the number 2 team, the player to watch this week, Derrick Henry. Over his last 4 starts against the Texans, Henry has averaged 223 rushing yards and over 2 touchdowns, with 0 of those 4 games with less than 2 touchdowns. So every game, 2 touchdowns, at least 200 yards against the Texans. Now, the real feel in Houston on Saturday is going to be 7 degrees and winds between 12 and 24 miles an hour. The run games of both teams are going to take over. And Henry comes in with back-to-back games over 100 yards against the 32nd ranked defense against running backs, giving up over 25 points per game 6 times this year and over 30 points per game to opposing running backs, including a season high of 46 points against the Tennessee running backs back in Week 8. He is primed for a huge weekend. Now, his area of concern, hang with me on this one, Josh Allen. Well, it's hard to have any concern ever over the number 2 quarterback in the league. One thing to note is the weather in Chicago for Saturday, where the winds will be whipping between 20 and 32 miles per hour with a real feel of -14. Could result in a recipe that would limit the amount of times that Allen would be able to throw the ball, keeping all points on the ground, which could limit his total points. While Josh Allen is a versatile QB and can run the ball effectively, there may be a little bit of a limitation at Saturday's game due to the weather, so something to keep an eye on. And the number 3 team, Triple Team, looking to make another run back to the championship. His player to watch this week, Travis Kelce, up against the worst defense in the league against tight ends. Kelce could be primed for a big week. In a game that has one of the highest over-unders at 49.5, there should be plenty of points to be had in this back-and-forth offensive showdown. Seattle, on average, giving up almost 12 points per game to tight ends, and 3 times this season has allowed more than 20 points per game to a tight end, including last week against Kittle and San Francisco. Kelce could prove valuable this week in a very favorable home matchup against Seattle. Now, an area of concern for Triple Team is the running back game. Both Mixon and Chubb are going to have difficult matchups this week. Mixon against a stout and top fantasy-ranked defense, the Patriots, with added wind gusts up to 40 miles an hour. And with a 12-degree real feel, he could have his work cut out for him. In just 3 games since his 50-point outburst, he's averaging just 45 yards a game and no touchdowns. And Chubb has an even worse matchup with the Saints-Brown game having the worst weather across the board this weekend with a real feel of -18 and a potential for up to 60-mile-an-hour winds. The run games are likely to be all this game features. However, that means extra linemen and extra linebackers could prove for a tough matchup for the backfield of Triple Team. And for the remaining 4 teams, unfortunately, you will not have a player to watch in an area of concern because you lost. It's Friday and it's Christmas break. Judge me. So, what we're looking for on these 2 games, we've got Stop the Steelers versus Gridiron Legacy. Will the Legacy turn it around? Their 11-game losing streak to push the Steelers towards their 2nd straight Sacco, or will the Steelers earn their 3rd victory of the season this year against Gridiron Legacy, something that many teams find hard to do, beating a team 3 times in 1 year. The other matchup being Aim for the Bushes and Team Big Hands Rocket Arm. Please change your name. With the season series split 1-1 in a pair of blowout games, 125-98 and 118-88, who breaks the tie and owns the series for the summer? Aim for the Bushes comes in on a 4-game losing streak, looking for a little Christmas magic to turn around his season at the end here, while Big Team Hands Rocket Arm comes in winners 4 of their last 5 and winners of every game except 2 when he scores over 100 points. So that's likely going to be the magic number we're going to be watching. Does Rocket Arm score 100 points? 2 great matchups on the bottom half of this bracket, with still jostling to figure out where everyone's going to finish this year in fantasy football. There you have it. There's your Week 2 fantasy football playoff preview. We got 4 teams looking to battle out for a spot in the championship finals to be duked out next week, and 4 teams looking to avoid the Sacco. Should be a good slate of games this weekend. Most of them coming on Saturday. A couple games could be decided in the late window on Monday, but there is one thing for sure. We're going to have a great Christmas weekend with football. Hope you have a great Christmas weekend with your family. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals. We'll talk to you next week.